Gentlemen, welcome to the Leawood Planning Commission. The meeting will come to order, and the clerk will call the roll, please.
Yes, Commissioner Carlberg. Commissioner McGurran.
Here. Pardon me, Commissioner Carlberg is here by via Zoom. Scott, you might try we couldn't hear you, so you might check your mics.
I'll start from the beginning. Commissioner Carlberg.
Yep. Still couldn't hear you, Scott. Just count him as present, and we'll continue to work on the technology.
Sure. Commissioner McGurran.
Here.
Commissioner Belzer.
Here.
Commissioner Hoyt.
Here.
Commissioner Coleman. Commissioner Block.
Commissioner Coleman show him as present as well by
Okay.
Zoom. We're not hearing his audio either, so.
We do see him now.
There he is. Maybe it's part of that technology.
Commissioner Stevens.
Here.
Commissioner Guyed.
Here.
Chair Elkins.
Present. So it appears that we have a full house today, one way or the other, so I appreciate that. I find that a quorum is present. We'll move on to the business of the evening. Does staff have any revisions to the agenda that was presented to the commission?
No.
If not, is there a motion?
Mr. Chairman,
Commissioner Hoyt,
I move for approval of the agenda as presented.
is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Mr. Block. All those in favor of approving the agenda as it was presented to the commission, please indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, same sign. The ayes have it, and the agenda is unanimously approved. We have a series of minutes this evening. We'll take them up one at a time, if you all don't mind. We'll start with the minutes from the Planning Commission meeting of March 28th. Are there any pardon me, are there any revisions or amendments to those minutes? If not, is there a motion to approve?
Mr. Chairman,
Commissioner Hoyt?
I move for approval of the March 28th Planning Commission meeting minutes.
Thank you. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Commissioner Belzer. All those in favor of approving the minutes, draft minutes for the Planning Commission from March 28th, please indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, same sign. The ayes have it, and the minutes from March 28th are unanimously approved. Next are the minutes from the April 11th Planning Commission meeting. Make sure I've got them in sequence correctly. Yes. I would note that it looks like there's a little bit of a duplication there at the very beginning where there's a quote attributed to me. Are there any changes to the agenda? Then we have the caption for the approval of the agenda, and apparently I asked a second time for any revisions of the agenda. I would ask that the first entry be stricken as duplicative. Are there any other revisions or amendments to the April 11th meeting minutes? Not, is there a motion?
Mr. Chairman,
Commissioner Hoyt.
I move for approval of the April 11 Planning Commission meeting minutes
As revised?
as revised.
Thank you. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Commissioner Belzer. All those in favor, please indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, same sign. The ayes have it, and the minutes for the April 11th, 2023 meeting as revised are approved. Next are the minutes from the work session on April 11th of 2023. Any revisions or amendments to those?
Mr. Chairman,
Commissioner Hoyt.
just a couple of minor ones. On page 7, the statement attributed to me, there's a gap in some information or some statements there. So on the second line where it says, or one of the other currently approved, and it says now after the fact, so it should read, one of the other currently approved materials, and now the applicant wants to change it after the fact.
Thank you.
And then the other one is on page 8. The first statement attributed to me, I believe that's a question and not a statement, so maybe it should read, have we recently approved mixed-use developments instead of we have?
Okay.
Or maybe I said we have, but I implied it was a question, but it didn't come across.
Question mark in your tone.
Yes,
Okay, very good. We'll make that change.
thank you, that's it.
Other changes? If not, do I have a motion?
Mr. Chairman,
Commissioner Hoyt.
I make a motion for approval of the April 11 work session meeting minutes with the 2 corrections noted.
Thank you. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Commissioner Belzer. All those in favor of approving the minutes from the April 11th, 2023 work session with the revisions indicated, please indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, same sign. The ayes have it, and those minutes as revised are approved. I note that we have one case on the consent agenda tonight. That's case number 33-23, Aventino, final plat, request for approval of a final plat located south of 135th Street and east of Rowe Avenue. Do any commissioners wish for a presentation with respect to case number 33-23? If not, is there a motion to recommend the consent agenda to the governing body for approval?
So moved.
Thank you, Commissioner Block. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Commissioner McGurran. And good news, Scott, we heard you that time, so technology's working there. I should give you the second just because we could hear you. All those in favor of recommending case number 3323 on the consent agenda to the governing body for approval, please indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, same sign. The ayes have it, and case number 33-23 is recommended to the governing body for approval unanimously. That brings us to the new business of the evening. The commission will now call case number 25-23, Mayfair at Regents Park, Townhomes Tract A. Request for approval of a final plat and a final plan located south of 135th Street and east of Chadwick Drive. Does staff wish to be heard?
We do.
Please proceed.
Mr. Chairman and members of the Planning Commission, this is case 25-23, Mayfair at Regents Park, Townhomes on Tract A. This is a request for a final plat and final plan. This project encompasses a total of 8.4 acres and is part of the larger Regents Park development. This is located south of 135th Street and east of Chadwick Drive. The preliminary plan for this case was approved back in September of 2020 with case 04-20. This project site is currently vacant and is situated just north of 137th Street, the future 137th Street, in the Regents Park Villas. The applicant is requesting approval of a final plat and plan for 59 townhome units on 8.4 acres, and this will include 3 and 4 unit buildings with shared walls and a total of 153,486 square feet of construction. The density for this tract is 7.02 dwelling units per acre. This is below the allowed 7.26 dwelling units per acre for an RP3 zoning district. These buildings are to be 3 stories tall, about 37 feet at the highest point. There will be 15 buildings. It's 1 3-plex and 14 4-plexes. There's one main entrance to this site located on the southern corner of the property off of 137th Street. There is a secondary entrance and exit proposed. This will directly adjoin to the already approved 135 development. Parking for the individual garages for the townhome units will account for 2 vehicles per unit for a private garage. There are also 36 parallel parking stalls for surface parking for visitors. A common park is located centrally to the development and will provide walking paths, seating, and lawn areas for the residents to use. This will be an open turf area and will have 2 circular limestone seating areas with fire pits in the center of them. These are connected by a 5-foot pedestrian pathway, and all pathways within this amenity area will be lit with bollards. Pickleball courts will be provided for the residents of this development on the southeastern side. Staff has requested the addition of a more substantial pedestrian connection to the pickleball court area. The primary exterior materials do include composite wood, cementitious stucco, composite aluminum paneling, hardy board, clay-fired brick, cast stone, natural stone, and stone veneer. Lighting is being added to the site with the construction of these buildings in the form of street light luminaires, as well as downlighting to better illuminate the townhome buildings. Landscaping is spread throughout the site, including street trees, ornamental trees, and shrubs. A landscape buffer surrounds the majority of each building. Staff has requested that additional landscaping be added to the west side of the site to better buffer both the proposed development and the future development on the parcel to the west. Signage is not reviewed or approved with this application. This application meets all requirements of the Leawood Development Ordinance, and staff recommends approval of case 2523 with the stipulations listed, and I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Ms. Geist. Questions for Ms. Geist? Commissioner Block?
Just a couple minor things. So this is a private drive,
Yes.
and then I know there's one of the comments is they're going to provide stamped concrete crosswalks. I know last time we were here a couple weeks ago, we talked about, I guess, the bigger crosswalk to the east of this. I mean, is it a maintenance issue, though, from the city's perspective? I mean, is it less of a concern because these are private streets and because they're not as heavily traveled, maybe as that other intersection?
I'm not sure. We've heard a few different things, but Public Works or the applicant might be able to speak to that a little bit better.
Okay. Like I said, it's kind of minor, but I'm just curious if, it's something that the city doesn't recommend at this point.
Mr. Scoville?
Brian Scoville, City Engineer with Public Works Department, and because these will be in a private development on private roads, the Public Works will not have maintenance responsibilities.
But are you concerned about just if the city's trying to move away from them, should this developer be encouraged to move away from them as well because they're not holding up as?
Good question. Because we've asked developers to move to a stamped concrete, that's gonna help.
Okay.
But it will be more, it is a known additional cost that I think has been discussed, that an alternative material is the look and aesthetic that Leawood has required on other developments, internal and private. So I think there is a cost, but it's been discussed and incorporated into other developments throughout the city.
And so the city, I guess, would have to ultimately ensure that the developer keeps it.
It would be up to our codes department to make sure that they keep up with that for ADA accessibility routes and whatnot.
Okay, thank you. And then just one other question, if I could.
Commissioner Block?
Just minor again, but, there's a call out on how the trash is handled, and I don't recall seeing that before. I'm just curious if this is different than other developments of this type.
That was primarily clarification to just verify it matches how the villa's trash is going to be handled to the south. They are more multifamily buildings, so occasionally with like an apartment complex, they might have a trash enclosure. In this case, we just wanted to make it clear that that's going to be, since they are single-family residences attached, that it'll still be the same process as the villas.
I see. Thank you. That's all.
Thank you, Commissioner Block. Other questions for Ms. Geist?
Yeah, just a point of clarification. Shall I go
Commissioner
ahead?
Hoyt. Yeah.
Okay, and that is that you do want us to replace the stipulations 11, 22, and 27 with the document that you handed out.
Yes, staff spoke with the applicant earlier and worked through some of the issues that they had, and so we were able to come to agreement and would like to replace these three with the proposed language.
Ms. Geist, could you summarize the changes?
Sure. So for stipulation number 11, that's the one that I spoke to about the amenity area, the pickleball specifically, the pedestrian connection. Staff felt like that could be increased a little bit to provide a better pathway for some of the townhome buildings to get to this area. So, and we originally wanted there to be more connections to the surrounding portions of development, but there aren't connecting pedestrian pathways, so we removed that portion of it. So now it's primarily the pickleball connection. Stipulation 22, that is regarding additional landscaping. Originally on the plan that you saw, there wasn't any buffer landscaping on the north or the western side of the property. We asked the applicant, since we're not sure what's going to be on the west side, and then there is another multifamily development to the north, that they would provide buffering similar to what was proposed with 135. And they have agreed to do it on the west side with trees and some different things. On the northern side, though, 135 did provide a buffer on their southern portion that will actually act as a buffer for this as well. So that answered that question. So they are going to provide additional landscaping, primarily on the west side. And then for number 27, this was just a clarification that the applicant had for stucco. There were portions of stucco we were told that are not natural, so we just kind of reconfigured the stipulation to really only speak to the natural stone.
Thank you. Commissioner Coleman.
Yes, Mr. Chairman. Ms. Geis, I'll ask this question of the applicant as well, but can you tell me if these are going to be rental units or ownership?
I believe these are all going to be ownership units.
Okay, I'll confirm with the applicant. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Coleman. Other questions? Ms. Geis, just to help orient me a little bit, and I happen to be looking at sheet C6, just kind of arbitrarily looking at that one. Pardon me, the walkway that is on the east there that appears to go into a parking lot, is the parking lot, I'm trying to figure out the best way to ask this. Is the parking lot part of the 135 development that we looked at last meeting?
Yes, so the area that you're speaking to, that's actually where staff originally wanted there to be another pedestrian connection to get over there. There is not a pedestrian connection running north and south, so we were okay with removing that. That requirement that we had, that is feeding into that southern portion of the L shape on 135. So there will be vehicular access. People could walk, but there isn't a connection from that development. So we're focusing mainly on the vehicular for this.
But what's shown on here does show that connection now. So is that still there?
You're
Or least
looking at sheet
I thought it was a connection on
C6.
C6. Maybe I'm misreading what I'm looking at.
That should just be vehicular. The applicant wasn't wanting to propose
Okay, all right.
pedestrian, so.
All right, very good. Thank you. If there are no further questions from staff, I would invite the applicant to come forward. Welcome back. If you could state your name and business address for us, we'd be grateful.
Thank you. Good to see you guys again. Patrick Reuter with Clover Architects, 8813 Penrose Lane, Lenexa, Kansas, 66219. Let's pull it up here. Alrighty. We're here for the townhomes on behalf of Mr. Rick Lashbrook. So just to kind of orient everyone to the site, since it has been a little while, since 2020 when we first got this approved, the 135 development borders our site, and our site is highlighted in red here on the west. On the 135 borders us on the north and east sides, 137th Street to our south, and the villas and recently approved clubhouse to the south, currently under construction. So as Catherine had mentioned, our primary entry to the site is down here off 137th, and then our secondary entrance in will be off 137th here through 135. It's just going to highlight some items of the site plan. So the townhomes are a 2-3 split design. So the front of the townhomes is 2 stories as it fronts the main entry drive here, so along the park and along the main entry. And then we utilize the grading to kind of slope down to the back with the garages on the rear side of the development. So they're rear entry garages. Each unit has 2 spaces in those garages, and then there's additional parallel parking out front for either convenience of the residents or visitors. One of the things that's really exciting about this project, which I've been looking forward to getting to do for quite some time, is the enhanced resident balconies and the pedestrian streetscape that's along this. So you have this kind of private loop drive, a very nice internal park, and then you have along the parallel stalls, a sidewalk and alternating planter beds. And then you have raised front porches in front of each of the units. So, if you're having out your morning coffee, or my wife and I like to have our afternoon wine in front of our house and, see our neighbors walking around, I think it really lends to, creating a really nice kind of elegant pedestrian experience in this development. Amenity-wise, we do have the pickleball there on the south side, nestled in on the back of some of those buildings as well. And on the bottom right here is just kind of a quick close-up of the rendering of that streetscape, so you can kind of see how the parallel parking interacts with those planter beds, sidewalk, pedestrian scale light poles, and then kind of those steps up to your kind of like public-private balcony there. Also featured is the Mayfair Central Lawn or park that's within this development. So this is also a really nice feature for all these residents. I will take this time also to say that it is ownership. These are not intended to be for rent. So those residents will have access to the park. So there's a central lawn area, some limestone seating benches along this curved area, two different kind of more semi-private areas that have fire pits and then lit bollards as well. To get over to the overall design, again, trying to create a cohesive development with this. So we are on the north side of 137th, next to the 135 development pictured on the bottom right, and then the townhomes pictured on the top right there. So again, we're pulling a lot of the materials, colors, and forms from these buildings. These are the flat roof designs to kind of mimic the 135 that we are next to. And then this is also rendering, kind of shows you some of those balconies and up front porches as well. So in terms of design, we have two different overall massings and then two different color schemes as well. So we really have kind of four different building types to keep the development, not all the same, to provide variation. So style A has a white, primary white siding, brick, lap siding, some hardy trim elements, and then also throwing in some wood to kind of add some warmth to it as well. And then you can kind of see some of that enhanced landscaping kind of all along the front in all of these renders. So here's that same exact style, but with a lighter blue siding. Style B, again, similar all on the front porches. It's just breaking up the different massings, but still pulling elements from each of the different buildings together to stay cohesive there. So you can see the front porches that kind of enter into a main living area, which is up off this patio, and then the master bedrooms are also situated over that have kind of a secondary balcony as well on that third floor of the building, or second floor on this side. And again, here's that same design in blue. Just to quickly go through the 2-3 split to kind of make it clear. So on the left here is that internal loop, drive, and park area. The building kind of slopes down, and then we have our basement level that kind of nestles in there, and then is exposed as it goes all the way to the rear garage area. So to kind of touch on your question regarding trash, like a typical single-family home, most people keep their trash cans in the garage, pull them out to the back of that alleyway, picked up, and then returned at the end of the day. And that will also help keep kind of that nice, pedestrian and park, kind of clear of all that as well. I want to touch on stipulations. As Catherine mentioned, we worked with staff and kind of worked through all of these. I won't go through the proposed language as we're good with everything that's presented in the staff memo in terms of all the language here. But just to kind of clarify exactly what we are intending. So this red line right here is that additional sidewalk that we are intending to add connection to the pickleball courts. I think this little sidewalk piece right here, Commissioner Elkins, might have been what you were referring to in the parking lot. We'll remove that so we're not encouraging people to walk into that private street. In regards to landscaping, so this area in red here, which is on the western boundary and the little bit of piece of this north here, that's where we will be adding in the landscaping to kind of match what was approved on 135. And just for reference, I just did a quick little snippet of the landscaping plan that was approved at 135, just so you can see that mixture of shrubs, understory plantings, and a few trees. One stipulation that I did want to discuss that was not talked about was stipulation 16 that asked for all the downspouts to be enclosed. We would like to propose the removal of the stipulation, similar to how we also requested it on the clubhouse. It's not required in the RP3 zoning, and it's not done on the adjacent twin villas, and we have the same concern that we did on the other project, that it causes water intrusion and just invites wood rot issues. So all the downspouts will be on either the rear corners or the sides where they will not be visible to public view. With that, I'm open to any questions.
Thank you. Questions for the applicant? Commissioner Block.
How wide are the sidewalks in front of those?
I believe they are 5 feet, and then they get wider as they're spaced with the planter bed, so 5 foot minimum, and they widen out as needed.
Okay. And then I guess how wide is that alley?
Believe
And I guess maybe the feet won't really matter to me. I guess my only reference is, I guess, Meadowbrook and the homes. I don't know if you're familiar with where the homes are. I don't know what side that is on. I guess to the south side maybe, where there's a gate, and it's pretty tight. I've been back in those areas, and I guess if a trash truck is gonna navigate through there? I mean, will,
Yeah, so the alleyways are, I believe, 22 feet wide. A standard kind of internal roadway is 24, so they're only 2 feet more narrow than you would a standard road, so they're almost a two-way street in width, just a little shorter.
okay, that's all I have. Thanks.
Thank you, Commissioner Block. Commissioner Belzer.
Can you tell me who your target occupant is for these homes?
Yeah, I think it's, single family use. They are, 3 bedrooms or 3-4 bedrooms. So it is going to be kind of those, I think single family type occupants. And then if there are, any retirees that might need the extra bedrooms for offices, but obviously open market too.
Are they accessible? Are they handicap accessible? Because there's like a lot of stairs to get up into them, and from downstairs you have to go upstairs. So are there any accessibility?
Actually, in the floor plans, we've looked at including the possibility of residential elevators within them. So I don't have any of those in my presentation, but there's closets that line on all 3 floors. And we've been working with an elevator company, so if we do wish to, when under construction, add any of those in, we do have the potential to do that.
And you have enough space at the front to build ramps for people
Because
to get in, or?
because you could access from the garage, you can go in, the elevator would serve all 3 stories, so it'd be primarily access from the rear for that resident.
Okay, and what is your feeling about where these will come on the market in terms of pricing?
I believe we're targeting 650 to 7s. I think we're going to try very hard to keep a 6 in front of that number. But obviously, with all the amenities and enhancements here to recoup that, I believe it'll probably be either high 6s or low 7s, but unsure.
Okay, and then speaking of the amenities, the twin villas or the villas across the street have the whole amenity with a pool. Will these residents be able to access that as well?
No, that is going to be private to the twin villas. So these residents in the townhomes will have their pickleball courts and no access to anything that the villas have to keep it separate.
Okay, I had a question about the alley too, but you answered that. And then, there's no green space or private space in the back? Like if you have a pet, there's not, if you have a pet in this development, you're gonna be walking your dog, right? There's not. like,
Correct, there's not
space outside to let your dog go out.
So each building has their kind of smaller side yards directly adjacent, and then obviously, with the park and all the other green space kind of around the development, but, yeah.
Okay, that's it.
Thank you, Commissioner Belzer. Other questions? Yes, Commissioner Carlberg. Oh.
Yeah.
Sorry. I guess I have a question and a concern about the revision of stipulation number 11 that I'd like to work through with you. So I can't remember if you were here when we were talking about 135 last time, but there was a lot of discussion about the aspirational thought that the city has for pedestrian connectivity. And this collection, I realize that these are different developments, and Mr. Lashbrook has some, and there may be others that will have others, but we talked at some length this last time about that pedestrian connectivity, and I guess I'm curious if folks that live in this particular development that we're talking about here in Mayfair at Regents Park, if they want to access the mixed-use residential office retail to the north, how can they get there? Have you all, and the idea that was kind of highlighted was by the removal of the reference in the stipulation to pedestrian walkways to adjacent properties. So can you speak to that for me, please?
Yeah, and removal of that piece was really us looking at, where are there existing approved sidewalks adjacent to us on the north and the east side. To your point, right now, any residents that would like to walk there via sidewalk have to go down to 137th and then back up to the development. The main access, the main sidewalk connection point.
So basically, you'd have to
is
go to
at the south.
137th and then to the sidewalk on High Drive and go north there?
Yes.
Okay. was there thought in the design process given to some sort of more direct pedestrian access to the north? And if so, why the decision was made that was made?
Yeah, and part of this is to, kind of create, a unique kind of, neighborhood for some of these residents. So it was kind of a mix between, having those pedestrian connections and then also creating kind of more of their, the residents' own little environment. So while it is part of an overall development, it still feels a little bit private to those single-family users.
As I say, I guess I've got some concerns that as I look at the broader picture, it seems like that entire kind of square there is kind of the neighborhood, if you will. And it's a concern to me that essentially and I get what you're saying from a privacy standpoint. Another way of looking at the same thing would be to say that we're isolating Mayfair from the rest of the development. And that's from a policy standpoint, and again, an aspirational standpoint. I think that with these mixed-use developments, we're looking at the idea of connectivity rather than isolation. But that, again, the other commissioners may see that a little differently. But I appreciate your answer. That's exactly what I was concerned about. Any other questions for the applicant? If not, thank you. You can step down.
Thank you.
And I guess that brings us to a discussion of what's proposed here in case number 25-23. Who'd like to start?
I guess I just have one more question for staff, if I could.
Commissioner
And it's
Block.
on that connectivity and I thought part of the 135th Street corridor plan was to have 6-foot sidewalks. I know we dealt with this with the development to the north. And it wasn't called out. I guess you guys are all okay with the 5-foot sidewalks within here. But I thought that they really should be 6 foot. Is that not the case, or if we set a different precedent?
If you recall, when this originally came through, the 137th Street was supposed to be a little bit further to the south, and the mixed-use area was supposed to be a lot larger. And then they did the RP3 that was located to the south of 137th Street, so that got wider up here. And so this is actually an RP3 section that got approved with the plan and not mixed use. I think Commissioner Elkins is absolutely right. We do like to see that connectivity. Part of what we are having issues with is as far as it would guide them into a parking lot that it didn't really appear. We didn't want to lead pedestrians into a parking lot that didn't have the cross access on the other side, and that development has already been approved. In addition, that portion of the mixed-use development has 193 residential units that are located there. It has a little bit of office and a little bit of retail, but the majority of that is going to be located on the east side of High Drive as you go across. Again, if we can get that connection, that would be fantastic. We're just worried about as far as leading a pedestrian into a parking lot essentially with no place to go.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes, Commissioner McGurran.
one follow-up question. I'm looking at C2, and all of the agricultural unplatted land that is directly to the west of the proposed site is, even to this day, there's nothing being planned or drafted for that land?
Correct. We don't have any application on that piece of property.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman?
Commissioner Hoyt.
The applicant was taking issue with stipulation 16. So does staff have any input on that concept?
And 16 is with regard to the
The downspouts.
downspouts. And this is something that I think the Planning Commission wanted to take a look at individually if they felt that it actually met, especially on residential. Staff doesn't really have any problems with this one since it is kind of more residential and since it is going to be tucked in to not be visible from the public right-of-way essentially. But that would be up to the Planning Commission if they feel that's appropriate or not.
So if we did remove 16, or would it be better if we decide that the applicant's concept for using the non-enclosed downspouts is appropriate? Do we need to specify what he actually just said in his presentation, that they were going to route them to areas that were not visible from the street side, or is that already in the plan someplace?
I believe it's in the plan, but that's not a bad idea as far as just to include and make it very clear.
Okay.
Commissioner Bills.
I have a question. So across High Drive, this connectivity, this connection that we're talking about, remind me what's planned for that rectangular piece between 135th and 137th on the other side of High Drive, to the east of High Drive.
And on the north side of 137th Street, is that,
Yes.
that right? Okay. The majority of it will actually, and he might be able to put up a plan which should help. There is an assisted living facility that's supposed to be located at the very eastern corner of it. And then they have office and retail primarily that are located within that side of the development. So the overall development actually includes both sides on High Drive as far as the east and the west, and the percentages of uses are being met by adding those together.
Okay, so I agree with Chairman Elkins that I think connectivity between these two areas is really important. Maybe it's something we can ask for to be added in the future as things are developing, as well as to the north. If this is 135 right here to the north, at the north border of the townhomes, having some kind of connection at the northeast side of these townhomes makes sense to get up to 135 as well, because you're walking. The whole point of all of these mixed-use developments is to have walkability and connectivity. So you wouldn't, if you're gonna walk, if you live in this townhome way up on the north side of this development, you're not gonna wanna walk all the way down to the street and then back up and around, because this is your backyard. So what's gonna happen is people are just gonna cut across the street anyway. So it seems that we should be advocating for connectivity to take place in a much safer way, because people are going to do it anyway. If I live there, I'm not walking all the way down to go across the street to get a coffee. I'm gonna just probably cut through that alley and right across the street into that development anyway.
And actually on the north side, that's probably better than where that vehicular access is. So they're only traveling across as far as that one single lane as you go through, and it connects to an east-west sidewalk that runs along and then does kind of continue along, as opposed to if it was located within the vehicular driveway that they're proposing that goes into 135, that just kind of dumps out into parking spaces.
Right, so while I understand the applicant's point of view, I also agree with Commissioner Elkins that it's really isolating if it's not walkable. Then I don't think that's the best way to deal with this mixed use and the connectivity that we're striving for with all of our mixed use.
Commissioner McGurran.
To piggyback on that, because I agree with you, looking at, again, what I believe is, well, it's what's on the screen. Mark, are you indicating that at the top of the 4 townhouses that are on the northern section of the property that we're talking about, if you drew a line from the middle of the furthest one to the west and you went straight across, wouldn't it be as simple as creating a sidewalk that went up across that property and then maybe eliminated a tree or two that's on that corner that would create a sidewalk that goes up to the development? Wouldn't that be the shortest distance needed to create a connection between 135 and the townhomes?
And just to make clear that what I thought I heard you say, are you talking about the townhome that is furthest to the west?
Correct.
Or, okay.
Furthest to the west and furthest to the north in the development that we're talking about. If there was a sidewalk that just went across that, going to the north, that where it looks like there's 3 trees that are on that far west section of 135, wouldn't it be as simple as putting a sidewalk that went up that direction and then, and in a sense, because of the parking lot and the asphalt and everything, would tie in when you turn to the right to go into any of those shops?
You would,
I guess the question
Maybe, I'm
is,
still not sure which.
are there any sidewalks aside from the, are there any sidewalks aside from the internal sidewalks?
If you don't mind, I know it's a little out of order. I think the easiest way that we would like to handle it is, I think, just keep stipulation 11 as written. I was just looking through the grading plan real quick to make sure I understand where we could probably get sidewalks easiest. I think, let me get to an enlarged plan real quick. Two options that I see, I think, to your point, I think bringing a little leg off here and heading to the north to connect is an option.
Straight up.
Another route would maybe be to keep this piece here and come back down to the south within our own property and connect to 137th on the east side. That's a little bit easier from a grading perspective. So we're open to look at either of those, and we can keep stipulation 11 as written if you guys prefer.
And I think, we're best served to leave the actual design to you guys, but I think you hear at least what three of us are thinking in terms of the importance of not changing stipulation number 11. And again, the other thing, I know we've already approved 135, and I don't know where they exactly stood in their parking, but after I tell you that, I'll let you design it yourself, and I'm going to tell you how to design it, is, to create some sort of a walkway that just goes right through the middle of that parking lot, you're going to lose a couple of parking spaces each row, so you might lose maybe 6 or 8 parking spaces, and that may create a problem for you from your compliance standpoint. I understand that, but again, what we're trying to accomplish here is kind of a long-term plan, is to improve the walkability of our developments in Leawood. So that's again, the commission may see it differently, but I would certainly I would encourage us not to make the change to stipulation number 11. Any other comments on the downspout issue? I mean, I understand from the many discussions we've had in the past on commercial space, the engineering issues there are and the potential maintenance issues there are, and it seems like all those issues would apply equally here as well. Mark, is that probably correct?
Yeah, I would say with regard to this development, it probably, and maybe the applicant can speak more to this, I think flat roofs are the ones that it's much easier as far as to internalize the downspouts than if you have, for instance, the pitched roofs. The pitched roofs, from what I understand, is, they have to go through to the gutter and then another piece that wraps around and then internalizes in. And that's really where a lot of that problem comes from. In addition to, it's also right on the edge where more tendency to freeze maybe. I've heard some of the developers indicate they can actually, on a flat roof, kind of push the, I guess, the downspout in forward, so it's kind of surrounded, and it's not so close to the surface of the building, and so it stays warmer, and again would eliminate that freezing potential.
Okay. Other comments or discussion? Commissioner Coleman.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just 2 points. I agree with the other commissioners on connecting to the other developments. I'd put both in. I'd put a north access and south. Either that or, people are going to create their own, like Commissioner Belzer said. People want to go to the north, they're going to be walking over the grass to get there anyway. So I would encourage the developer to put both the north and the south connectors. I just want to make one comment on the ownership. We've seen a lot of apartments coming up on 135th Street. We've talked about affordable housing. I know affordable housing in Leawood is a whole different subject because of the price point, but I'm very pleased that we're putting some kind of ownership owner occupied development on 135th Street as opposed to more apartments.
Thank you, Commissioner Coleman. Other comments? If not, is there a motion to be had?
Can I just
Yes, Commissioner Hoyt.
continue the comments just a
Absolutely.
little bit more? I'm just curious to hear what other people think about the downspouts. Because I hear differing things. We seem to spend a lot of time talking about downspouts in these meetings. It sounds like staff is not opposed to allowing the external downspouts in this instance.
I think they're more appropriate probably in residential as opposed to commercial. And if they are tucking them in and concealing them from as far as the public right away, the visibility, I think that helps.
Agreed.
So, I mean, I'm not opposed to allowing them to have the external downspouts if they're sufficiently routed to stay out of sight lines.
Is there some language? I know that you were interested
Yes,
in adding
yes,
language.
yes.
Patrick, do you have some language?
What are
you
the
find
magic
acceptable?
words that would ensure that these are
Yeah.
invisible? Or less visible?
We did send in some elevations that show their location, and we also called out them to be painted to match adjacent materials. So when Eric and I were looking at where they go, we were trying to find obviously the shortest route possible because we want to have as little gutter to the said downspout as possible. So each design is a little bit different just because of how the roof forms play out. But on, I think it was design B, it goes straight out, there's a scupper and it goes straight down, there's no downspout. The other design, it's a very short linear run before it goes straight down. So I think the plans have it shown and they called it out to be painted to match the adjacent material, so it will just kind of blend in with what's there.
So you would prefer to do that rather than try to fashion language in that stipulation?
Since it's in the plans, it would technically be part of the approved documents, and I think that would probably be easier since it's already designed it instead of with language. But I'm open to either way that you guys prefer.
Mark, Catherine, what are your thoughts?
I think it'd probably be better if we had the language to specify.
In
So-
the stipulations?
Yeah, the stipulation, yeah.
So if we said something like, all downspouts shall be directed, what, is it appropriate to say to the rear of the,
Yeah, to the rear is fine.
to the rear of the townhomes, comma, not visible from the front street side, and painted to match adjacent materials?
I think so.
Okay.
I don't know, because if one is on the side, you might be able to see it from the street. I think they're on the rear, as close to the rear as possible, so maybe not the middle part of that language, just for clarity, but it's pretty close.
Okay. Okay. But they will be directed to the rear.
Correct.
Mark, did you get enough of that to add it into the stipulation? Okay.
Check the tape as well, just to make sure that
Okay.
I get it correct.
So basically directed to the rear and painted to match adjacent materials.
I am good with that.
Commissioner Block?
One more question on downspouts. So these are 4-unit buildings and some 3, if I remember correctly?
Correct.
So how many downspouts? So does each unit get a downspout?
Each building has 2, so only 2 downspouts per building.
Thanks.
And
Okay.
it felt to me, although I don't know if, I'll leave it to the commission as to whether we need to vote, it felt to me like we were getting close to a consensus on the pedestrian connectivity and not to change stipulation number 11.
Correct.
So,
Kind
Mr.
of where we're at.
Chairman,
Commissioner Hoyt,
I'd like to make a motion.
please proceed.
I move for approval of case 25-23 with the following modifications. The change associated with stipulation number 22 as proposed by staff in their April 25th, 2023 memo. Changes to stipulation number 27 as also proposed by staff in their April 25th, 2023 memo. And a modification of existing stipulation number 16 to read, all downspouts shall be directed to the rear of the townhouses and painted to match adjacent materials.
Thank you, Commissioner Hoyt. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Commissioner Block. Any discussion of the motion? If not, we'll move to a vote. All those in favor of recommending case number 25-23 to the governing body for approval as outlined in Commissioner Hoyt's motion, please indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, same sign. The ayes have it, and case number 25-23 is unanimously recommended to the governing body for approval. Thank you very much for your time this evening. The commission now calls case number 35-23, Hallbrook Country Club Clubhouse Expansion. Request for approval of a final plan located south of College Boulevard and west of Overbrook Road. Does staff wish to be heard?
We do.
Ms. Geis, please proceed.
Mr. Chairman and members of the Planning Commission, this is case 35-23, Hallbrook Country Club Clubhouse Expansion. Request for approval of a final plan. The special use permit and preliminary plan for this case was approved with case 02-23, which you saw earlier this year. This project is proposing the addition of 4 pickleball sport courts, a 2-story pro shop addition, cart barn, improvements to the existing building terrace, fire pits, a patio expansion, the modification of cart paths and sidewalks, and then the removal and replacement of existing tennis bubbles over 4 of the existing tennis courts. The final elevations with this plan propose painted fiber cement straight edge shingle siding, which is going to match the existing clubhouse, as well as a flat concrete tile roof and standing seam metal accents. The proposed pro shop building is approximately 28 feet tall from grade to the top of the ridge. Overhead doors will be used for security to the underground cart barn and will be white in color. For landscaping, the applicant is proposing a mix of ornamental shade and other trees and shrubs to screen the pickleball courts. The applicant is also increasing the landscaping along Overbrook Road and extending it to provide a denser buffer from the road. To allow for the construction of the pickleball courts, 11 trees are being removed, which is going to total 91 caliper inches, greater than the 12-inch requirement that will need to be replaced. The applicant will provide an updated tree inventory and replacement plan prior to governing body consideration. A deviation was approved with case 02-23 to reduce the setback from the required 40 feet within SDCR zoning to 33 feet to allow for the currently proposed placement of the pickleball courts. The applicant is compensating for this by providing additional common open space. For lighting, the applicant is proposing building downlights as well as new pickleball court lighting, which will be 25 feet in height. There is one vehicular entrance to the property, which is located on the east side of the property off of Overbrook Road. Concrete golf cart paths are being updated to shift path connections. The parking on site is currently legal non-conforming as the ratio is above what is allowed, but the addition of these new structures will actually bring the property more into compliance. No additional parking stalls are being added or removed with this project. This application does meet all requirements of the Leawood Development Ordinance, and staff recommends approval of case 35-23 with the stipulations listed. I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Ms. Geis. Questions for staff? Commissioner Block.
So on the part about the landscaping, so I guess I'm just not sure. How I read this and what you said are a little bit different in my mind. It says that they need to provide a revised landscape plan meeting all the requirements. I guess just keeping that part, are you okay with what they've proposed to add? You're just looking for an updated tree removal plan, is that?
Yes, what is being added, we're okay with. We were provided with the, removal plan and weren't provided with caliper inches until closer to the meeting. So unfortunately, we don't have the replacement species and sizes yet. So we were asking for that prior to governing body consideration. They are taking out 11 trees, but we only require the 1-to-1 replacement for anything over 12 caliper inches. So not all of those trees needed to be replaced. So we're gonna work with the applicant between now and governing body to see what they want to replace those with and where they want to do that. They have quite a bit of area on the property that they could put them, so.
So overall, you're happy with the landscape plan, it's just what's actually there and what's actually being removed, is that, I think you said that, but I'm just
Yes.
trying to make sure I understand. Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Block. Other questions for staff? If not, I would invite the applicant to step forward. Welcome to the Planning Commission. If you could state your name and business address for our record, we would be grateful.
Good evening. My name is Jason Asper. I'm the general manager at Hallbrook Country Club, which is located at 11200 Overbrook Road here in the beautiful city of Leawood.
And Mr. Asper, do you have any concerns or objections to the 27 stipulations that are included in staff's report to us?
No, we do not, sir.
Okay. Anything additional you'd like to add to the record?
No.
Questions for Mr. Asper? We've got a quiet bunch tonight. You can step back. Thank you very much.
I'm happy to speak, but thank you.
We appreciate the work that you're doing there. Brings us to a discussion of case number 35-23. Any comments from the commission? If not, is there a motion?
Mr. Chairman,
Commissioner Hoyt.
I would like to move for approval of case 35-23, Hallbrook Country Club Clubhouse Expansion. Request for approval of final plan.
Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Commissioner McGurran. Any discussion of the motion? If not, all those in favor of recommending case number 35-23, along with stipulations 1 through 27 to the governing body for approval, please indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, same sign. The ayes have it, and case number 35-23 is unanimously recommended to the governing body for approval. I think that concludes our agenda for this evening. Mark, are you guys planning on a work session in May?
Correct. So May 9th, I also mentioned, I think, the last meeting too, we have a CIP that's supposed to go to the work session and then onto the Planning Commission on the 23rd. I have heard there may be a little bit of change, but we still have some issues with regard continuing the roofing that we talked about at the last work session with the asphalt.
Yeah, I think the council is having a work session on CIP next week, perhaps? Or maybe it's a budget, I'm not sure.
Yeah. Currently, right now, we plan on having the work session for CIP on the 9th and then recommendation on the 23rd.
Any other business to come before the commission this evening? If not, thank you all for a good night's work, and we will stand adjourned.
Thank you.